back. 2 days of streaming in a row. First time we've done that. Today's going to be real quick, probably less than an hour, but I had some time to hop on and pretty excited about getting the first version of this app wrapped up. So, yeah. Last time we left off with all of our stat calculations. And that's where I'm going to pick it back up today. So my thought process here is that it was in this file, wasn't it? Yes. So, I need to build out single rounds and then just find a way to incorporate that into a new function here. Calculate stats. Probably, I guess I'm currently doing it like this. That's probably not bad. So, all stats calculations. Single round calculations. I was thinking for the single round we could take in the number of holes and then just loop over another function for each hole. That was my thought. Just so I'm not doing this massive thing in one single function, trying to break it out as much as I can. I want to do them all together, do like an entire hole together and calculate fairway hits and putting statistics, just because I think that's going to be way more efficient than trying to run through each hole every time just to calculate one stat. So like running through all of hole 1 to calculate putting statistics and then running through it again to calculate fairway hit, and that seems unnecessary. I can probably break it out into a new function. Like I can have a determinate fairway hit. And so maybe we leave this as is. We call this one single round calculations, individual stat calculations. Yeah, and so this structure is going to change. But we can start with this. And then that way I can just add functions for each individual stat I want to add down the road. Functions for calculating each individual stat. So that's going to be here. I guess this is what we can start with. Is copy going to work today? No? Why is... This is driving me crazy. Copy keyboard shortcut stops working in versus code. There's no preferences. Settings. Keyboard shortcuts. Copy. It's clearly there. Extension, which is instead, let's look at this. Terminal copy selection. Is this one the one that's... Yeah, maybe we just remove that one. Except copy, does that? Seems to work right now, actually. Okay, sure. Back to the individual stat calculations here. Get rid of scramble rate. We're throwing that below scrambles. And then we just need one function for each of these. And I'm going to try and make it look somewhat similar to this. So for a single round fairway hits, it is going to have this format. This function is going to be for a single hole, though. The single round statistics will add those up. Yeah, so this needs to be for a single hole. Trying to think of what the most efficient way to do that is, because essentially what I'm going to be doing is on every single hole the user is going to have an array of generated shot values that look something like this. All right, so let's say this is a par 4, this would be a bogey. On that hole, they're throwing from the tee, or par, excuse me. Land in the fairway, they land in C1, they make the putt. On a par 3, I don't believe that it's considered a fairway hit unless you're at least in circle 2. So this would be a miss. My question is do I just create the fairway hit function to take in this entire array for every hole to determine what the correct stat is, or do I go through each value as I'm... The simplest thing to do would just be to pass that array to every stat calc. But my concern is that I'm going to have 20 to 30 different calculations. And if I'm just taking that array, that means that for every single one of those calculations, I'm passing this entire array plus the whole par plus maybe some other information. And so each one of these functions is then going to run through the whole array. And granted, it's a small array. I understand that. But I'm just thinking that as of right now, if the user adds 100 rounds into the app, this function is going to run through the single round calculations 100 times. Single round calculations is then going to call each one of these functions 100 times however many holes there are for each one of those 100 rounds. So, ballpark, assume they're all 18-hole courses, then that's 1,800 times that it's going to run through each one of those stats. So if I have 20 stats, that's 36,000 runs of a function. Maybe that's not going to be that slow, but surely there's got to be a better way. I can always do a lot of it in the background, but this is probably a good question for Chat GPT. So maybe we just try that real quick. Yeah, view that displays the all-time stats of the user in the app. I will have 20 to 30 stats tracking things like C1x putting percentage, for example. Putting, I have to look each individual hole to track attempts and makes. I intend to have a function to do this for a single hole. I would then have a separate function called single round stats, run through each individual stat function on each hole for as many holes as there are on the course. As many holes as there are on the course. For this all-time view, it would then need to run through the single round stats function for as many rounds as the user has in the app. The concern is that this will take a lot of time and battery to run. Is there a more efficient way to do this? Yeah, that makes sense. So it's just suggesting what my initial idea was, which was basically to do the same thing that I'm doing here, except saving the stats in just like the local storage on the phone to then update as every round is added, which I can definitely do. Regardless, these stats need to be in here. So fairway hit calculation. I want these functions to be a little bit cleaner. Fairway, so we're just going to call it fairway hit. It's going to have list string of shot sequence, and then it's going to have a int for hole par. You can just call it par. That should be all the information I need on a fairway hit. I'll still leave those functions in because I might need it. This should just return a bool. Fairway hits yes or no. On my single round calculations, it would call that function to be true. Or maybe I wanted to return 1 or 0 just so I can add to it. Trying to avoid a bunch of just really long if statements. Tempt is always equal to 1. Make is always equal to 1. So now I'm thinking that maybe I have it return a really it's just going to depend on how I want to store it. We'll leave it as a bool for now just because that is simple. Var hit equals false. I'll have an if statement here. If false. Return hit. I'm not actually going to, I'm creating the functions. I'm not going to put the logic in them just yet. Because it's going to depend on how I create those shot sequences, which is something we still are going to have to do. All right, so fairway hit. This one will be called parked. Shot sequence in par. I don't think I need anything else. It's just parked for birdie. So I just need to know how many shots, where they landed, what the par is. I'll call this parked. Okay. Next is circle 1 in regulation. C1 in regulation. That should be the same thing. Please keep that copy working. Pretty please. C2 in regulation. Still returning bools. C1x putting, so that one's going to need to return integers. It needs to return makes and attempts. C1x putting, shot sequence. Stop. I don't even think I need the par for that one. I don't need the par for that. That's just shot sequence. X makes equals 0. Or C1x attempts equals 0. And yeah, we're going to return just like that. Okay. C1 putting and C2 putting will all be basically the same thing. And there's always going to be some overlap, like if the user's parked, there's assumptions that I can make in the code about, but I built C1x once before, I mentioned that, and so a lot of this logic I already kind of have an idea in my head of how it's going to go, but I know that just the more that I try to do on top of each other to create shortcuts, I just end up nesting a ton of if statements. So I think just doing everything separately is going to make things easier. I could be completely wrong, but scrambles is going to have to, I'm going to need the user score too. I don't need it for fairway hit. I don't need it for parked. I can determine shot sequence and par. C1 in regulation, C2 in regulation. The shot sequence gives me what I need there. I think on scrambles, having the user score will help. Scrambles is need to determine makes or scramble opportunities, and if the user did actually scramble. Scramble attempts equals 0. Scramble successful equals 0. Return that. Scramble attempt, scramble successful. Shot sequence, I want par. I want user score. Scramble rate. This is where we get that overlap that I'd like to avoid. Scramble rate would probably just show as a percentage. Do I really need an additional function for that and for OB rate? Or can, like, do I need scramble rate here, or can I just say, 10 for 15, 67% next to it? Is that a... I think that's sufficient. So right now we're going to get rid of scramble rate. Let's go to all stats, scramble rate, we're getting rid of. Yeah, get rid of scramble rate there. OB rate, I do want that to be a separate function just because that's like OB. I forget how it's calculated, but it's like OB strokes per round or something. Scrambles is good. Scramble rate would be a percentage. Fairway hit's going to determine if it was hit. Single round calculations. It's going to have to put together the percentage. I think my... Whoa. Come. I think my math function has the... Yeah, calculate percentage. Okay. All right, so scrambles, OB strokes, that's just going to be a number. Scrambles is a success percentage. OB penalty strokes, I may just want rate on that and not... We'll leave it for now, and if I need to remove it, I can. OB strokes, list string shot sequence. OB strokes equals 0, return OB strokes, and then this is going to be double OB rate. Am I actually going to calculate the OB rate here? Let's OB rate 0.056. Is that just 1 divided by 18? Is that all that is? Yeah. Okay. So they're calculating OB rate is just how many holes did you go OB on the round? Okay. OB or hazard. So we are calculating total OB strokes. OB rate. I mean, it's ultimately just going to be an average. We're already going to be calculating scramble rate, fairway hits, etc. within this function. Yeah. So we can do the same for OB rate. It's just going to be strokes. Well, actually, this just needs to return a hole. I can have multiple OB strokes on a hole. OB rate just needs to return OB on the hole. Shot sequence. OB on the hole equals, I'm gonna make this a bool, and then return OB on the hole. Okay, that's how we're gonna do that. Eagle rate. So this ultimately is just counting number of eagles. Yeah. Okay, so bool eagle list shot. Actually, I don't even need the shot sequence. I need par and user score. Par score. Bar eagle equals false. Return eagle. And then we need birdie. Par, bogey, double bogey or worse. Birdie. Par. Bogey. That's probably not going to work because I've got the same names here. We'll call it even par, just so they have different names. So when I use this variable in the function, I don't create issues. And then we've got double bogey, worse. Double bogey or worse. Okay. So that should be all we need to calculate rates. Do I have an A stat yet? Is that really not something I've added? It's really not. Okay. We're gonna add that now. Aces. And we gotta have an ace stat. Ace. Ace. I don't even need par. We need user score. All right, so we got all the scorers. Bounce back rate. So this one is going to be tougher. Birdie streak counter probably just needs to be in that single round calculations. Same thing with bounce back rate. So this one we're going to have a int. This one's going to be bool bounce back. So bool bogey last hole, int par, int user score. Bar bounce back is equal to false. Return bounce back. So just because these are going to require calculations on a number of holes, I'm returning makes and attempts. So I could calculate a C2 bonus. But C2 bonus can't be calculated per hole. Well, we kind of can. So bounce back rate is there, birdie streak, bogey streak, and C1 makes streak. So int current birdie streak, int previous streak, int par, int user score. Our current birdie streak. All right, and then we're going to have a current bogey free streak. Bogey free streak. All right, and then we're going to have a, yeah, just like that, perfect. Previous streak. That one might need to be on a hole by hole basis, actually. Bogey free doesn't need to be. C1 makes streak does need to be on a hole by hole. Int C1 makes streak. Int previous streak. List string shot sequence. Like so. Added bounce back. Yes. We added those. All right, and then C2 bonus. That one I think we can calculate on an individual hole as well. Int C2 bonus. Int previous bonus. List string shot sequence. Yep, just like that. All right. So functions are all created. We can get rid of this. So now we have an individual function. Obviously, it's not going to work because we didn't put any logic into it, but we at least have the structure of those functions set up. Each individual stat for a single round. So we're almost there. Let's go ahead and go back to this single round calculation. And then how we're going to do this. So here we're going to have a for single round. So this is going to be a fairway hits. Because now I actually have to register them. I'm registering a true or false there. Total fairway hits equals 0. If fairway hit is par, fairway hit total fairway hits plus plus. So shot sequence is going to be shot data shot data hole shot data hole, and then par is going to be pars hole. Does that make sense? Total, we're going to calculate total fairway hits there. I'll have to go and kind of revise these items. So if parked what the heck is that? Parked var total parked equals 0. Total parked plus to increment it. Got a lot of these to do. C1 in regulation, C2 total, C1 in regulation, total C2 in regulation. I can go ahead and add those two. There is some overlap I can do here. So what I can do is we can say if C2 in regulation, total C2 in regulation, and we know that if you're in circle 2 in regulation, or if you're not in circle 2 in regulation, then you're definitely not in circle 1 in regulation. So we can nest this if statement inside of it, so that's at least only one less step to run if we're not. We can actually do the same thing with a lot of these. Parked can be the same thing. Parked will not happen unless you're in circle 1 in regulation. All right, so we're shortening things up a little bit there. C1x putting. C1x putting. Just call it C1x putting is equal to this makes temps we do want those total C1x putting. Okay. So these are not going to be if statements. Total C1x putting is equal to C1x putting shot data whole. No, we can't do that. Okay, so those are all done. C1, C2 putting. Scrambles, var total scrambles is equal to 0, 0. Total scrambles is equal to scrambles. It takes in shot sequence, par, and user score. Pars whole user whole scores whole. Okay, so scrambles is good. OB strokes, total OB strokes is equal to 0. Let's go ahead and add one up here that is var number of holes. This is just going to be equal to parse length. Just so I have that variable, that's what it's called, easier to reference later. Total OB strokes, so total OB strokes is equal to OB strokes, and I take in just the shot sequence. Okay, so that one's done. We have OB on the whole. Our total holes with OB is equal to 0. And this will be total holes with OB is equal to OB on the whole, shot data whole. What does that return? That returns a bool. Okay. So this needs to just be a if OB on the whole, shot data whole. Plus plus. Increment it. All right, ace. So this is going to be var total aces, total eagles, total birdies, total pars, total bogeys, total double bogeys or worse. All right, so we've got total aces is equal to aces, just ace. And now when I just need the user score, user whole score whole. Oh, I just returned a, okay. So what we can actually do here is we can start with birdies. So if birdie pars whole, user whole scores whole, because that returns true if it is, total birdies plus plus, and then here we can check for eagles and aces. So there's no way to eagle without it counting as a birdie. There's no way to ace without it counting as a birdie. If eagle pars whole, user whole scores whole, total eagles plus plus. And I think it is possible to ace and not eagle if I let people set up par twos. So ace, user whole scores whole, and then here we'll go total aces. We got OB on the whole on there. Ace, eagle, birdie. Okay, and then we've got even par. So that does not have to be here. So if even par, pars, whole, whole scores whole, total pars plus plus, and then we can do the same thing with bogeys and double bogeys or worse. If bogey pars whole, user whole scores whole, total bogeys, yeah, so it's got the idea here. Double bogey or worse. You can nest that in there. All right, so bogey, double bogey or worse, those are all done. We've got C1 make streak and C2 bonus. So those probably just need to be counted. So let's go var. Current C1 makes streak equals 0. Current birdie streak equals 0. Current bogey free streak equals 0. Our current C2 bonus equals 0. And then we've got bounce back as well. Var. This can be kind of near scrambles. We'll put it down here. Var total bounce backs is equal to 0, 0. All right, C1 makes streak. So for the C1 make streak, we have to include the previous streak and the shot sequence. So we'll just throw that down here. Current C1 make streak is equal to C1 make streak. Current C1 make streak and shot data hole. Okay. Current birdie streak, are those all right? Oh, I definitely did just call them the same thing. So this one just needs to be called birdie streak and bogey free streak. And I will probably sign off for the day once we get these in there. Birdie streak, bogey free streak. Pass the current birdie streak, parse holes, and then C2 bonus. Previous bonus and shot sequence. So I don't think we need those. And then we also have the bounce back. So total bounce backs is equal to this. And then bogey last hole. So we can just call this var bogey last hole equals false. Bogey last hole. It needs the par, and then it needs the user score. Doesn't like that though. Oh. If it needs to be attempted, so this should probably be a attempts. So this needs to be a list and bounce back. Make attempt, return bounce back. Yeah, and then total bounce backs will be equal to that. Okay, so we're calling all of the functions. The only thing that's left is to actually put in the logic for actually calculating each stat, but then they're done. So I can pretty confidently say that these are all done. Create file with functions for calculating each individual stat for a single round. All the functions are there, all the logic is here. It's just the stats itself. And then putting that together at the end. Single round. I'll make it like this so the error is there, just so I don't forget about it. But we will probably go ahead and call it there. Create file with functions. Add functions to new view file to take stat calculations. Deliver the final stat to show. Okay, so that'll be a part. Filling this in will be a part of that next item. So let's go through. Let's go. Actually, I don't think I need to check them all off. I think I can just check one here. Can. Okay. All right, well, I think we will probably call it there for today. That was a lot of the important logic for getting the stats in. We'll go next time, we'll fill in this. So that's our variable that's actually going to display all of the stats. We'll finish our display here, which is already pretty much there. I think we added aces. It's not showing yet because I think I've got some errors there. that is pretty much there. And then the next step is going to be actually scoring rounds. So that'll be pretty cool. But yeah, we'll call it there for today. Thanks to anybody who finds this after the fact, and we'll see